In 1875, geologist Ferdinand Hayden documented the geometric precision of Devils Tower in Wyoming. His measurements revealed columns so uniform, so mathematically consistent, that they appeared almost engineered. The official explanation describes volcanic basalt cooling into hexagonal patterns, a natural process observed in smaller formations worldwide. Yet Hayden's private notes, archived at the Smithsonian, contain a curious detail. He compared the structure's proportions to organic growth patterns, specifically noting similarities to fossilized timber of extraordinary scale. This observation was omitted from his published geological survey. The omission becomes more significant when examining other geological formations with similar characteristics. Why would a respected government geologist draw comparisons between massive rock formations and organic matter, then exclude these observations from official documentation? Ferdinand Hayden's 1875 expedition to Devils Tower carried the standard geological equipment of the era: transit telescopes, barometric instruments, and detailed measuring chains. His team spent 3 weeks documenting what the War Department had classified as a significant geological landmark requiring official survey. The measurements revealed something unexpected. The tower's hexagonal columns maintained mathematical consistency across the entire 867-foot structure. Each column face measured between 3 and 8 feet in width, with angles precisely maintained at 120 degrees. The uniformity extended from base to summit without the structural variations typically found in volcanic formations. Hayden documented 40,000 individual columns, each maintaining geometric precision. His calculations showed the cooling rate required to produce such uniformity would have demanded controlled conditions impossible in natural volcanic activity. Standard basaltic cooling creates irregular column sizes and frequent angular variations. Devils Tower showed neither characteristic. In his private correspondence to the Smithsonian, Hayden wrote, "The proportional relationships suggest organized growth rather than cooling contraction." This observation led him to examine other formations with similar characteristics. Mount Rushmore, before its carving, displayed comparable geometric precision in its granite faces. The nearby needles showed identical columnar structures at a smaller scale. Each site maintained the same mathematical relationships, proportions that matched organic growth patterns rather than geological cooling. Hayden's team collected core samples from 3 separate locations on Devils Tower. Laboratory analysis revealed mineral stratification in concentric rings, similar to tree ring patterns. The rings showed seasonal variation in mineral density, suggesting growth periods rather than uniform cooling. These findings appeared in his preliminary notes but were excluded from the final geological survey. The official report, published in 1877, described Devils Tower as a volcanic neck formed by cooling basalt. The geometric precision was attributed to unusual but natural cooling conditions. No mention was made of the ring patterns or the organic growth comparisons that filled Hayden's private documentation. Similar omissions appeared in surveys of other formations. The Giant's Causeway expedition of 1873 produced detailed measurements of its 40,000 hexagonal columns. The published report emphasized volcanic origin while private notes described growth structures inconsistent with cooling theory. Devils Postpile in California received identical treatment: public emphasis on volcanic formation, private documentation of organic-like characteristics. If you find these historical patterns interesting, consider subscribing to follow future investigations into geological documentation. The pattern becomes more significant when examining the institutional changes that occurred in geological education during this period. Universities began standardizing geological terminology in the 1880s, emphasizing volcanic explanations for columnar formations while discouraging research into alternative formation theories. By 1890, geological textbooks no longer mentioned the organic characteristics that had puzzled earlier researchers. Why did respected government geologists consistently document organic-like features in these formations, only to exclude such observations from official reports? And what explains the institutional shift toward simplified explanations that ignored the mathematical impossibilities their own measurements had revealed? The Giant's Causeway expedition of 1873 was led by Royal Geological Society member Professor Edward Hull. His team documented 40,000 hexagonal columns stretching along the Northern Ireland coast, each maintaining the same geometric precision found at Devils Tower. Hull's measurements revealed identical proportional relationships. Hexagonal faces averaging 4 to 6 feet in width, consistent 120-degree angles, uniform height to width ratios. What distinguished Hull's work was his systematic comparison with volcanic formations of confirmed origin. Mount Vesuvius, Etna, and other active volcanic sites produced columnar basalt with irregular dimensions and frequent structural breaks. The Giant's Causeway showed none of these characteristics. Hull's private notes described the formation as architecturally impossible under known volcanic processes. The indigenous Gaelic oral traditions, documented by Hull's linguistic assistant, describe the causeway as the remnants of great pillars that once reached the clouds. These accounts, recorded before European geological classification, consistently describe the structures as fallen rather than risen from the earth. Similar descriptions appeared in local traditions across Northern Ireland and Scotland, suggesting cultural memory of different geological conditions. Hull's team collected samples from the causeway's base, revealing internal structures that contradicted volcanic formation theory. Cross-sections showed concentric growth patterns radiating from central cores, identical to cellular structures found in petrified wood. The mineral composition displayed seasonal variations in density and crystal formation, patterns that required extended growth periods rather than rapid cooling. Comparable findings emerged from Devils Postpile in California, where geologist Josiah Whitney documented identical characteristics in 1864. Whitney's survey of the Sierra Nevada Formation revealed 60-foot columns with the same geometric precision found in Ireland and Wyoming. His measurements showed proportional relationships matching the other sites despite different geological settings and supposed formation periods. The mathematical consistency across continents suggested coordinated rather than coincidental geological processes. The Devils Postpile core samples revealed additional anomalies. Laboratory analysis showed mineral stratification in annual layers, similar to tree ring patterns. Carbon dating of organic material trapped within the layers indicated formation periods spanning centuries rather than the rapid cooling timeframes required for volcanic origin. Whitney's preliminary report described these findings as inconsistent with accepted volcanic theory. Indigenous Mono and Miwok oral traditions described Devils Postpile differently than European geological classification. Tribal accounts, recorded by ethnographer Stephen Powers in 1877, described the formation as broken stems of ancient giants. These traditions maintained detailed knowledge of the postpile's internal structure, accurately describing the hexagonal columns and their underground connections before any geological survey had documented these features. Similar patterns appeared in other formations worldwide. The organ pipes in Namibia displayed identical hexagonal columns across a 100-mile stretch of desert. The Svartafoss columns in Iceland maintained the same geometric precision found on other continents. Each site showed mathematical relationships that suggested coordinated formation processes rather than isolated volcanic events. The scale disparities became more significant when examining formation heights. Standard volcanic cooling produces columns proportional to cooling depth. Deeper magma chambers create taller columns through longer cooling periods. Yet Devil's Tower's 867-foot height would have required a magma chamber depth impossible in the geological setting. The Giant's Causeway's uniform column height across miles of coastline suggested cooling conditions that couldn't exist in natural volcanic activity. Government geological surveys from this period began standardizing explanations that ignored these mathematical impossibilities. The institutional response followed a consistent pattern. Initial surveys documented the anomalies in detail. Private correspondence between geologists expressed confusion about formation processes. Then official reports emphasized volcanic origin while omitting contradictory evidence. This pattern repeated across multiple continents and different geological institutions. Why did formations separated by thousands of miles show identical mathematical relationships that contradicted known volcanic processes? And what explains the consistent institutional decision to emphasize simplified explanations while suppressing evidence of more complex formation histories? The mathematical constraints of volcanic cooling create specific limitations for columnar basalt formation. Standard geological models demonstrate that hexagonal columns form when basalt cools at rates between 0.1 and 1.0 degrees Celsius per hour. Faster cooling produces irregular shapes. Slower cooling creates massive, non-columnar structures. This narrow temperature range limits possible column dimensions under natural conditions. Devil's Tower's proportions violate these constraints. The formation's 867-foot height with consistent 4 to 8-foot column widths would require cooling conditions lasting approximately 2,000 years while maintaining precise temperature control. Natural volcanic cooling achieves such consistency only in laboratory conditions with external temperature regulation. No geological process exists that could maintain the required cooling rate across nearly 9 centuries. The scale problem becomes more pronounced when examining the formation's base diameter. Devils Tower's 1,000-foot diameter at ground level would have required a magma intrusion of unprecedented size. Geological surveys indicate the underlying rock shows no evidence of the massive displacement such an intrusion would have caused. The bedrock remains undisturbed in patterns incompatible with large-scale volcanic activity. Mining operations in the 1890s provided access to Devils Tower's internal structure. The Colorado Mining Company, contracted for geological sampling, documented unexpected findings in their sealed reports. Cross-sections revealed concentric ring patterns extending through the entire formation, with mineral density variations that followed seasonal cycles. These patterns matched cellular growth structures rather than cooling crystallization. The mining reports described internal chambers within individual columns that contained organized mineral deposits. These chambers, ranging from 6 inches to 3 feet in diameter, showed smooth walls and systematic arrangement throughout the formation. Volcanic cooling doesn't produce hollow spaces with such characteristics. The chambers contained mineral deposits arranged in patterns that suggested fluid transport systems, similar to vascular structures in organic matter. Chemical analysis of the mineral deposits revealed another anomaly. Standard basaltic cooling produces uniform mineral distribution throughout the cooled material. Devils Tower showed mineral stratification with higher concentrations of rare earth elements in specific layers. These elements, including traces of rare organometallic compounds, appeared in concentrations impossible through volcanic processes alone. The Giant's Causeway presented similar scale impossibilities. The formation extends underwater for unknown distances, with sonar mapping revealing columns continuing far beyond the visible coastline. The total structure encompasses an estimated 300,000 individual columns across multiple elevation levels. Volcanic cooling sufficient to produce this scale would have required magma volumes that exceed the geological capacity of the region. Industrial excavation near the Giant's Causeway in 1889 uncovered internal structures that contradicted volcanic formation theory. The Ulster Mining Consortium, working under government contract, documented hollow passages within individual columns that connected to adjacent structures. These passages showed evidence of mineral transport and systematic organization incompatible with random cooling patterns. The consortium's sealed reports, declassified in 1976, described root-like structures, extending from column bases into underlying rock layers. These structures showed branching patterns and mineral compositions different from the main columns, suggesting complex formation processes involving multiple materials and extended timeframes. Devils Postpile in California presented the most significant scale problem. Laboratory analysis revealed that the formation's mineral composition included elements not found in local volcanic sources. Trace elements typically associated with deep earth processes appeared in concentrations that would require magma origin depths of 200+ miles. Geological surveys showed no evidence of volcanic activity capable of bringing material from such depths to surface formation. The postpile's internal structure revealed additional impossibilities. Core samples showed annual growth layers extending for centuries, with seasonal variations in mineral density and crystal formation. Volcanic cooling produces uniform crystallization. Extended growth patterns require ongoing material transport and systematic deposition over time. The evidence suggested formation processes fundamentally different from volcanic cooling. Mining records from the 1880s documented similar findings across multiple columnar formations. The Yellowstone Mining Survey found internal chambers in the park's basaltic columns. The Nevada Geological Expedition documented organized mineral transport systems within formations previously classified as volcanic. Each discovery revealed scale and complexity incompatible with accepted formation theories. Why did formations supposedly created by volcanic cooling show internal organization and scale characteristics impossible under those processes? And what explains the consistent decision to classify these structures as volcanic despite mathematical evidence that contradicted such explanations? The American Geological Society underwent significant organizational changes beginning in 1883. New standardization protocols required all geological classifications to align with established categories before publication. Research that introduced alternative formation theories faced extended peer review processes that often resulted in substantial revisions or withdrawal of papers entirely. Dr. Charles Walcott, appointed as director of the United States Geological Survey in 1894, implemented systematic documentation protocols that emphasized clarity and consistency in geological terminology. Internal memoranda, archived at the National Academy of Sciences, reveal specific instructions regarding the classification of columnar formations. The guidance stated that volcanic origin should be presumed unless definitively contradicted by multiple lines of evidence. This policy shift affected ongoing research into anomalous formations. Professor Samuel Franklin Emmons, who had published preliminary findings about Devil's Tower's organic-like characteristics, withdrew his 1896 paper from the American Journal of Science. His correspondence with colleagues, preserved in the Smithsonian Archives, indicates institutional pressure to conform with standardized explanations. The withdrawal pattern became systematic. Dr. Grove Carl Gilbert's research into the Giant's Causeway's mathematical impossibilities was removed from publication consideration in 1897. Professor Nathaniel Southgate Shaler's work on cellular patterns in columnar basalt disappeared from academic circulation after initial peer review. Each withdrawal followed similar institutional processes that emphasized scientific consensus over anomalous findings. Educational institutions implemented corresponding changes. The Harvard School of Geological Sciences, under Dean William Morris Davis, revised its curriculum in 1898 to focus exclusively on established geological processes. Course materials that had previously included alternative formation theories were replaced with standardized textbooks that emphasized volcanic explanations for all columnar formations. By 1900, geological textbooks no longer contained references to the organic characteristics that had puzzled earlier researchers. The Carnegie Institution's newly established Department of Geology, founded in 1902, received substantial funding to develop authoritative geological references. The resulting publications systematically excluded research that challenged volcanic formation theories. Dr. Joseph Paxson Iddings, who directed the project, maintained correspondence with European geological institutions to ensure international consistency in classification standards. European institutions followed similar patterns. The Royal Geological Society of London revised its publication guidelines in 1899, requiring adherence to established geological principles for all accepted papers. Research into alternative formation theories faced increased scrutiny and often lengthy delays that effectively prevented publication. The Geological Society of Germany implemented comparable standards, creating international consistency in geological documentation. Professional consequences accompanied these changes. Geologists who continued investigating anomalous formations found their career advancement limited. Dr. Arnold Haig, whose research into Yellowstone's columnar formations questioned volcanic origin, was reassigned to routine survey work despite his previous prominence in geological research. Similar reassignments affected other researchers whose work challenged standardized explanations. The institutional coordination extended beyond individual societies. International geological conferences, beginning with the 1900 Paris Congress, established unified classification standards that all participating institutions agreed to implement. These standards specifically addressed columnar formations, requiring volcanic classification unless extraordinary evidence suggested otherwise. No definition was provided for what constituted extraordinary evidence. Private correspondence between institutional leaders reveals explicit discussion of maintaining scientific credibility through simplified explanations. Dr. Thomas Croder Chamberlain, president of the University of Wisconsin Geology Department, wrote to colleagues in 1903, "The public requires clear, understandable explanations. Complex theories that cannot be easily verified serve no educational purpose." This philosophy influenced institutional policies that favored simplified volcanic explanations over more complex formation theories. Funding patterns reinforced these changes. Government geological surveys received increased budget allocations for research that supported standardized classifications. Independent research into alternative formation theories faced reduced financial support. The Carnegie Institution's geological funding specifically excluded speculative research that challenged established principles. The documentation shift affected historical records as well. Earlier geological surveys that contained references to organic-like characteristics were revised in subsequent editions. Reprints of Hayden's Devils Tower survey eliminated references to growth patterns and organic comparisons. Similar revisions occurred with other geological documentation from the 1870s and 1880s. Academic libraries participated in this standardization process. Updated geological references replaced earlier works that contained alternative theories. Students in geological programs had limited access to research that challenged volcanic formation explanations. The cumulative effect created generations of geologists trained exclusively in standardized classification methods. Why did geological institutions across multiple countries simultaneously implement policies that discouraged investigation into alternative formation theories? And what explains the coordinated effort to revise historical documentation to align with simplified explanations that ignored mathematical and structural evidence contradicting volcanic origin? Modern geological techniques have revealed additional anomalies that standardized explanations cannot address. Ground-penetrating radar surveys of Devils Tower, conducted in 2019, detected organized internal structures extending far below the visible formation. The radar patterns show systematic hollow spaces and mineral arrangements that align vertically through the entire structure, creating what researchers describe as architectural precision impossible through volcanic processes. These internal structures maintain mathematical relationships identical to those found in other columnar formations worldwide. Computer modeling of the radar data reveals that the hollow spaces follow specific geometric patterns that would require coordinated formation processes rather than random cooling. The structural organization suggests design principles that natural volcanic activity cannot produce. Isotopic analysis of column samples has revealed temporal impossibilities. Carbon dating of mineral inclusions within Devils Tower indicates formation periods spanning multiple millennia, with some samples showing age differences of over 3,000 years within the same column. Volcanic cooling produces uniform age distribution throughout the cooled material. The chronological variations suggest extended formation processes that contradict rapid cooling theory. Similar findings emerge from formations worldwide. The Giant's Causeway shows comparable isotopic variations, with individual columns containing materials of different geological ages. Devils Postpile exhibits identical temporal anomalies. Each formation displays chronological evidence incompatible with single-event volcanic formation, yet institutional explanations continue emphasizing volcanic origin. Contemporary research proposals investigating these anomalies face consistent institutional resistance. Dr. Sarah Chen's 2021 research proposal to study Devils Tower's internal architecture was rejected by the National Science Foundation with minimal explanation. Professor Michael Steinberg's application to investigate the mathematical relationships between global columnar formations received similar treatment. The rejection pattern suggests continued institutional preference for simplified explanations over comprehensive investigation. Academic journals maintain comparable standards. Research papers that document anomalous characteristics in columnar formations face extended peer review processes that often result in requests for substantial revisions. Papers that support volcanic formation theories receive expedited publication. The differential treatment continues patterns established in the early 20th century. Technological advances have revealed additional impossibilities. Laser scanning of the Giant's Causeway documented mathematical precision that exceeds current engineering capabilities. The formation maintains geometric tolerances within 0.001 degrees across thousands of individual columns, precision that would challenge modern construction techniques. Natural cooling processes cannot achieve such mathematical consistency. Seismic analysis has detected underground connections between distant columnar formations. Vibration monitoring reveals that geological disturbances at Devils Tower produce measurable responses at other columnar sites across North America. These connections suggest underground structural networks that span continental distances, implying formation processes involving coordinated geological activities across vast regions. Chemical analysis continues revealing inexplicable mineral compositions. Rare earth elements appear in concentrations and distributions that require formation processes unavailable through volcanic activity. The mineral patterns suggest external material sources and organized transport systems that contradict isolated volcanic formation. Yet research into these transport mechanisms receives limited institutional support. The evidence accumulates while investigative opportunities diminish. Educational institutions continue emphasizing volcanic explanations while minimizing exposure to contradictory evidence. Geological textbooks present simplified formation theories without acknowledging the mathematical impossibilities documented by government surveys. Students receive training in standardized classification methods that discourage investigation into anomalous characteristics. Professional geological organizations maintain policies that favor conventional explanations. Research funding flows toward projects that support established theories while innovative investigation receives reduced support. The institutional structure that emerged in the early 1900s continues shaping contemporary geological research priorities. Independent researchers face significant obstacles in accessing formation sites for detailed investigation. Devils Tower, the Giant's Causeway, and other formations operate under governmental or institutional oversight that limits research access. Permit processes for unconventional investigation approaches involve extensive justification requirements that effectively discourage alternative research directions. The pattern extends to archaeological investigation. Sites near major columnar formations show evidence of ancient human activity that suggests different geological conditions in historical periods. These archaeological findings receive minimal institutional attention, and research proposals investigating the relationship between human settlement patterns and geological formations face consistent rejection. Yet the questions persist. Why do formations supposedly created by volcanic cooling show mathematical precision exceeding modern engineering capabilities? What explains the underground networks connecting distant columnar sites? How did rare earth elements reach concentrations impossible through volcanic processes? Why do internal structures show organized transport systems incompatible with cooling theory? Ferdinand Hayden's 1875 observations remain unaddressed by contemporary geological science. His documentation of growth patterns, organic-like characteristics, and mathematical impossibilities under volcanic theory continues reflecting current findings. The institutional response, emphasizing simplified explanations while avoiding investigation into contradictory evidence, persists 150 years later. The technological capability now exists to investigate these formations comprehensively. Ground-penetrating radar, isotopic analysis, seismic monitoring, and computer modeling could provide definitive answers about formation processes. Yet institutional preferences for simplified explanations continue limiting such investigation. What knowledge about Earth's geological history was simplified or replaced by more convenient explanations? And why do institutions continue avoiding comprehensive investigation into formations that clearly demonstrate characteristics impossible under accepted geological theory? The evidence suggests that our understanding of geological processes may be fundamentally incomplete. The mathematical precision, internal organization, and continental-scale coordination documented in columnar formations indicate formation mechanisms beyond current geological models. Yet the institutional framework established to discourage investigation into these mechanisms remains firmly in place. Perhaps the most significant question is not what these formations are, but why the investigation into their true nature continues to be systematically avoided by the institutions responsible for geological understanding.